Hi everyone, I'm Claire Muscat, guest host of the new show CX Today, bringing you the latest news and insight from the world of customer experience. Joining me today is Ray Biggs, Head of Customer Contacts at John Lewis Partnership. And today we're going to be talking about how retailers have adapted to customer and employee experience challenges during the pandemic. Hi Ray, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Claire. Nice to see you.
Welcome to CX Today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And welcome to everybody watching as well. So I'm really excited to have you here because it's my first interview for CX Today. We're going to have a real tail conversation, which is obviously my background as well. I probably should admit that you and I worked together a few years ago, back in our Sainsbury's days. So to set the scene, Ray, could you tell me a little bit about what it was like as the leader of a contact centre as the world began to shut down and we started to realise what the pandemic actually meant?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of weird to look back at that because it feels like it was years ago and it was, whatever it was, 7 months. So, I mean, for us, it was March, and we were really wrestling with the emerging reality of the pandemic. So, it generally does feel like a bit of a blur. There were a number of things that were going on. So part of my role is looking after John Lewis and also the Waitrose brands, and they're kind of two very different stories as part of the pandemic. So as the realization, probably the seriousness of the pandemic started to kick in, looking at what on earth we do with these big people operations, where I'd like to think our environments are actually quite nice relative to most contact center standards, but nonetheless, you've got a whole lot of people packed in together. And we were starting to see already, some real worry and some real concern from our partners just around the risks of traveling to work and being in work and that kind of environment. And then equally from our shops perspective, similarly, and if you think about our Waitrose shops and some of the panic buying and things like that. So there was an overall, it was quite a scary place to be, I think, and a real sort of like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And I think once we got to the decision that said, actually, we're not going to be able to keep these big centres open. It's just not safe for our people. We need to find something else, some other way of working. And then you get into the challenges of, we're a business, we're a retailer, we've got customers that we need to help and serve, and from a Waitrose perspective, customers that truly are dependent on you. It was a real kind of, how on earth do we do this, and what do we do? And it was a little bit of rabbits in the headlights, but it was an incredible example of how quickly people did come together and just did what moved mountains. So I mean, we were consider myself incredibly lucky. We were able to homework both of my operations. So it's circa probably around 1,500 people.
Wow.
That making the decision to getting everybody out was like 3 or 4 weeks. And I think if I'd have stood up a project to do homeworking, it would have probably been a 2-year program.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my peers certainly, and the folk that I talked to had similar experiences. Herculean efforts from our IT teams, from our people functions, and from our partners. The flexibility that our partners showed in suddenly going from coming to work in an office to setting themselves to work up at home, and the reality of that situation, right? Some people are living in shared accommodation, they're living with their parents. The homeschooling impacts. It was just unbelievable, really, what was achieved in such a short space of time, and how quickly we had to evolve and adapt. And I think that, certainly from a very John Lewis Partnership perspective, we love to get everything right. We've got such high standards, and we kind of had to go, do you know what? If we can get this 80% right, that's an okay start point, because you're not going to get this right from the off.
Yeah.
And we learned some quick lessons. So yeah, I mean, it was, in truth, Claire, it to a certain extent, it was absolutely crazy, right the way across the business. And because we are a general merchandiser and we're also a grocer, we had all of that. What's going to happen with our bricks and mortar, our shop trade, our online growth flying through the roof, our grocery trade was just crazy because customers were scared. So yeah, looking back, it felt crazy, and you can't. I think it's one of those things. I'm not quite sure how we got through it. In truth, the hours that people were putting in, and it's fairly emotional stuff. This is people generally very, very worried about the safety and the wider implications on their welfare, their well-being, mental health implications. It was huge. Yeah, it was crazy. We survived it, which was amazing, but it's not over yet, right?
No, true. And it's really heartwarming to hear that, actually, focusing not on what you were unable to do, but the Herculean effort of the partners and the people within the business to activate what would have been, and I agree with you, essentially to plan to turn on home working. So I'm really interested in understanding a bit more about that. What were the main people, process and technology challenges of making that happen in 4 weeks?
Blimey. I think one of the really interesting things, actually, from a people perspective, was communicating. So, and it I think we almost forget now what it was actually like in the eye of that storm, because externally, so many different things were happening. And for those people that are listening that went through it and were in similar environments, we were kind of hanging and waiting for the next government instruction. And then, of course, if you read social media, you would, there was a whole load of counterclaims, and it, to try and figure out what is the right thing to do. And therefore, communication became absolutely mission critical for us. And I have to say that, the partnership was incredible at really getting a handle on that and creating what was in the early stages almost daily updates of, okay, guys, this is what you need to know today. Here's what the latest developments are. Here's the latest information that's coming out of the government and the various health authorities. And what we did do really early doors, actually, which at the time I think probably was underappreciated, we very quickly attached ourselves to saying, look, there are a number of views, a number of opinions. We will align ourselves to the prevailing direction that's being determined by the government, which is informed by the various health authorities. And we can all have views of whether the government is right, wrong, or whatever, but you do kind of need to nail your mast to something, because if you don't, you drown in it all. So that became our kind of baseline, if you like. So getting the communication right. So bear in mind, suddenly we've gone from 1,500 partners in 2 buildings to 1,500 partners in 1,500 different houses. Well, not strictly true. We've got some family members that work for, but you get the point.
Get your point.
So actually trying to make sure that our communication was really clean, was informative, but also allowing a two-way kind of communication process as well. So being able to get feedback and really focusing in on that. So my leadership teams were brilliant and really repurposed themselves on absolutely putting themselves into our partnership communities and really using that as a way to understand what people's fears, concerns were, but equally to give people some really clear direction. And I think it's quite interesting. One of the things that I saw, and we often wrestle with, actually we want empowered people and all those kind of things. We absolutely do. I think it's quite interesting when you get into what was quite generally a crisis scenario. Sometimes actually people just want some really clear instruction.
Yeah.
And I think that the partnership and the executive team did a great job of enabling that. So from a people perspective, very much around communication and reassurance and talking to them and being really open and saying we don't know the answer to some things, and we're not going to pretend we actually don't know, and when we've got an answer we'll tell you, and getting some real honesty into the comms. From a technical perspective, I mean, wow, this was about going right. How do we do this at home then?
Okay, so did you have a cloud and cloud-based?
So yeah, I mean, we had the underlying capability to be able to deliver both our telephony and our desktop remotely. So through Citrix, and we've now moved on to Horizon. So we had the enabling capability to do it, but we've never really leveraged it in scale.
Right.
However, we suddenly got, so we could get stuff into customers' homes, providing partners' homes, providing they had a decent broadband connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we then going to work from got quite interesting. So, we were in some instances literally picking up the desktop PC that partners would be using on their desk, sticking it in a box, giving it to DPD and couriering it to their home. It was then being reconfigured to then allow it to use a local broadband connection, all those kind of things. Some partners had their own devices, so we were able to create secure access for those devices to access our systems and technology. The whole kind of GDPR piece around this was massive.
I was going to say, yeah.
There's a real temptation to go, oh, just do some stuff. Well, yeah, just do some stuff, but do it legal and be compliant, because the risks are massive. So whilst, I kind of, on one hand, it felt crazy and mad and fast and chaotic, but we were very disciplined around, actually, there's some stuff that's got to be absolutely on the money. So the kind of devices that we were able to use, how we locked them down, how we secured them. And that created some challenges. So suddenly we've got 4 or 5 different partner user experiences of the technology, which my technical teams then had to support. They did an incredible job. And you know what it's like, and those of you that work in call centers, your tech support guys are great. They can wander around, they whack a few buttons and magic happens. They're now having to do that remotely and actually talk partners through essentially self-serve, right?
Wow.
And some partners are very, very comfortable doing that, but some actually aren't. So it really brought to bear a different set of challenges and so some real flexibility and dexterity in how we approach things. We went from a one size fits all in a fairly regimented bricks and mortar center to actually we've got 5 or 6 scenarios now that we're going to have to negotiate around, and silly things like that there are certain key processes that are dependent literally on almost an old-fashioned till. I mean, it's not quite think open all hours, but it's probably not that. So there were some processes that we absolutely couldn't put at home. So we did need to have a very small number of partners still coming onto site. But then we had to completely rework our sites to be socially distanced. So reworking all of our desks, reworking all of our breakout areas, physically transforming our meeting rooms. And it sounds stupid, but things like, if it's a small meeting room that from a socially distanced perspective can only hold 2 people, you only ever have 2 chairs in there. So if you have 4 chairs in there, 4 chairs will get occupied.
Yeah.
and tapes on the ground and all kinds of kind of crazy innovative ways in terms of what we had to do physically in terms of our buildings. From a process perspective, in truth, not huge amounts changed, because it's still the same processes, you're still using the same systems. There may have been 1 or 2 more handoffs and those kind of things, but they broadly didn't fluctuate that much.
One thing I'm really interested in, I guess they could call this process, is how did measurement change during that time? Because contact centers, I guess, are very operationally focused. It's all about efficiency a lot of the time. Of course, there's a customer metric somewhere, but did all that go out of the window as well? I'm interested to know, temporarily, albeit, or did the measures and metrics change for knowing if you're performing?
Great question, Claire. It evolved in truth. So some of our core metrics remain the same. However, probably some of our emphasis changed. Yeah. So for me, as a responsible leader for that operation, what was more important was getting a real regular, almost weekly kind of sense check on partner sentiment. Yeah. And how are partners feeling in this new environment. Almost, your productivity. I'm kind of, are you okay?
Yeah.
Because there's something here, and I had a conversation actually a couple of weeks ago, and when you say it out loud, I kind of go, it sounds a bit weird, but we had people working from home who would be having 5 or 6 conversations an hour, maybe more, with customers. The nature of a lot of what we deal with is failure, right? People call us because something hasn't worked. We've basically taken customers into partners' homes. And your home is a very special place, right? It's for you, and it's for your family, and it's for your loved ones. And we're bringing something else in there in a way that, you and I, Claire, we'll have Zoom calls and all those kind of things, but it's kind of on our terms, and it's a very
not
difficult.
usually someone's for example.
Exactly, and some of it is conflict. Some of these are very upset and distressed customers. So we're almost bringing conflict into people's homes. And it's like, oh, hang on a minute, how does that work?
Also, yeah, and the isolation, I guess, because in a contact center you're surrounded by people, and you can ask for help and have conversations around how to deal with
mental
it.
health was the massive deal breaker for us on this. Effective comms, mental health, and what we were already on, and I'm kind of really pleased. We were already on quite a journey. We've been on a journey for a couple of years on really starting to focus on employee partner experience. So as you know, Claire, there's so much we need to do on customer experience, but actually not at the expense of for us partner experience. So we're already on quite a journey on that, and we were in quite a good place. But the mental health and well-being of my 500 partners, at least in a building, I can see them. And we all know just because somebody looks great doesn't mean that they are great. I'm not belittling that at all. But there's a sense of comfort when you can almost put your arms around them if you wanted to. Suddenly you scatter that to the winds, and you've got this real change in how they're working every day. There's this dynamic now where they are potentially isolated because and I know I used to work on the phone. You have a terrible call with a customer. You had to say, "Oh, that was awful." You all right? No, they were horrible. You get up, you go for a coffee, you have a chat to a couple, you come back. If you're at home and you live alone, what do you do? Who do you sound off to? Where does that release go? And if you don't address it, the risk of that building up, and what does that mean? So, the support that we did around mental health and well-being has been huge, and I'm really fortunate that I've got a team that are so passionate about this, have done an incredible job. And what we really focused on was weaving it in to what we do. So when we're having one-to-one conversations and we're having performance conversations, how are you feeling? Looking out for those telltale signs is all built into that. And we were doing health and well-being checklists, almost a 3-line whip. Everybody has to do one with every single partner over a certain frequency, because that was one thing that we could really hang our hat on to say, we know we're purposefully doing something.
Caring about your employees. I'm really interested to see, actually, obviously when it all comes out in the wash, but what impact that attention to employee, not only engagement but well-being and care, ultimately does have on those operational metrics that we're always so fussed about in contact centers. I have a hypothesis that actually your customer experience and your operational matrix might actually improve during this time.
I honestly believe they will. So in terms of what we've seen so far, so one of the challenges that we've got, I feel like I'm pulling out my excuse list now to my board. But actually so much has changed for us. So to kind of look at our performance metrics now, post-COVID versus pre-COVID, you're not really looking at apples and apples.
Yeah.
Because, so for example, so much of our trade now has gone online.
Totally changed the operating model.
Yeah, absolutely. So a call from a customer about, what time does Waitrose in Maidenhead open versus my Samsung double door fridge freezer hasn't turned up. Are poles apart in terms of complexity and what you have to do. What we have seen is, positive movement in terms of attendance. So we've seen absence drop like a stone. And for any contact center, that's a big lever. So whilst are my productivity levels as good, I can't properly get a handle on it yet. My overall sense is we will be in a better place. What I do know is my employee engagement is better.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Now, I'm not we're not hanging the bunting out on that one yet, and it's
one
nowhere
to watch, though.
Yeah, it's nowhere near where we would like it to be. And is it part of the fact that people are worried because they look what's happening externally and worried about their job? There's all kinds of dynamics. I'm not naive to it, but we have seen a real positive uplift, and we're looking at what we do post pandemic, and do we bring people back, and what does homework? What I do know, we've surveyed our partners, and over 85% of them are saying, actually, Ray, we quite like this home working thing.
Yeah.
This is quite nice, actually.
Yeah.
Now, is that what we'll do? We've got a lot to work those kind of things. But it's really opened up some new opportunities. And one actually, just to kind of, I guess, reflect on a little bit, is with the technical capability of home working. In our situation, any of the retailers out there that are listening will recognize this. We were doing the okey cokey, right, with the shops. They were open, they were closed. The
okey cokey.
The shop okey cokey. But there is, we find ourselves suddenly with thousands of shop partners that, you're furloughing, they're not able to work. And what was really interesting, and I'd like to think it's unique to our business, but I'm actually sure many of the businesses are the same. These partners go, we want to help. We can see that everywhere's struggling around us, and our shops are closed. And what can we do to help? And loads of John Lewis partners moved across to Waitrose shops and all of that sort of stuff. But what I was able to do is go, well, I can get anybody working from anywhere. So why don't you do some web chat for us, and you can work remotely for me? So as a for example, when Wales went into their 13-day lockdown or whatever it was, we were suddenly able to mobilize, a couple of hundred of those partners, and they were working on web chat for us, or doing emails. I had partners in Oxford Street and Peter Jones helping take phone calls, right? And so suddenly you've got this, you're blurring the lines between shop partner, contact, you create an omni-partner, right?
I absolutely love this, and it was going to be my final question, was around how are you using technology to enhance employee and customer experiences, and this one is such a fantastic example. And I think omni-partner or omni-employee or omni-agent, it's just such a wonderful idea. And it's yours. It's yours. Like, all credit to Ray Biggs, 2020. But also I think in terms of the customer experience that could create, because working in retail in the past myself, one thing the contact center doesn't typically have is this product knowledge and experience and expertise that some conversations, particularly when it comes to sales, would benefit from. So tell us a bit more about that. How did you enable partners to be able to enhance experiences through technology?
Yeah, we're
omni partners.
It's one. We're in the foothills of this, and it's kind of it's been talked about on and off for a while. I remember having a conversation with Martin Hill Wilson probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Who's that?
Martin Hill Wilson. So he's you must know Brain Food. Do you not know Martin?
Oh yeah, right, okay.
So we're in the foothills of this. So and this is kind of one of the things. This experience over the last 9 months with COVID has taught us many things, and it's also massively accelerated our thinking. And this is one area. So we almost out of necessity, we've been able to use technology. And by the way, probably do need to recognise we've had some great support from our tech vendors as well. And I think what we have seen from certainly all the technology providers that I use, they've all stepped when they saw what was going on with COVID, they were all stepping in to say, how can we help you with this? And not in a we can
tell you something. Yeah.
It was very much saying, we recognise everybody's in a bit of bother. What can we do to help? And certainly, we're Salesforce. They were incredibly supportive and were genuinely really, really helpful. So we're in the foothills of looking at this and looking at, and it's some of the things that have been knocking around a while, and that's why it's kind of interesting, because in truth it's not actually new, but what it's done is it's accelerated your understanding, because what felt like a concept and almost prototyping isn't a prototype anymore. You can do it right now, and you can do it today. I can do it tomorrow if I want. I can take a call. I can take a web chat from a customer who's logged into our website, so we know who they are, and we know that they always shop in Oxford Street. And we could choose, if we wanted to route them to a partner in Oxford Street who can do web chat.
And is that on a mobile device?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, absolutely. So it could be on a handheld device. Absolutely. It could be at a PC in the shop. It could be working remotely. So we could do. We have the capability to do all of that now. And again, this is a bit fanciful, right? But imagine we've got a customer, we know who they are, they're on the website, they're looking at our mattresses, they're looking at a £5,000 mattress, and they're looking for some advice, and we're able to route them through to Ray, who works in Oxford Street, who's one of our bed experts. It's a good job to have. Their product knowledge is second to none. They know everything there is to know, and they're able to really help the customer. And actually, because they're also a shop partner as well, what they can actually do is say, actually, hey Claire, do you know what? I know that Oxford Street's your local store. I'm actually working. I don't know if you want to pop in on Saturday afternoon, but I'm going to be there. And actually, if you come into the bed section, I'll be there. Actually, this particular mattress that I'm recommending for you, we've actually got it on display, so you can come in and have a look.
Or while the shops are shut, could that be them giving them the confidence to then order online because they've had that showroom experience, not being able to touch the coils or the springs or whatever, but as close as you can get.
Claire, you're absolutely right, and I think the whole kind of bricks clicks thing is just has a real potential at the back of this to really kind of smash together. And I think what's going to be interesting is customers' confidence in digital has accelerated out of necessity because it's all they know. And we will be no different than any other retailer, financial services, utilities, whatever. Loads of customers have migrated across because they had no choice. When they then have a choice, how many will come back? And some of the things that they didn't trust about digital or didn't think they could get through digital, they perhaps realize, actually, yes, you can. Actually, from a Waitrose perspective, we look at our online deliveries and they've grown massively and all, which is brilliant. But, we've certainly seen examples there of customers who would never have considered, they would only ever want to go in the shop. They want to squeeze their own fruit and do all that sort of stuff. They don't want some muppet like me picking it for them. They're completely flipped and they've got, this is brilliant. I don't have to go out, don't have the stress, and what I get is brilliant, and the service is fantastic. The experience is brilliant. Why wouldn't you choose to do that going forward?
Yeah, and especially for however long it takes for us to have a vaccine that works, and there's still a risk to a lot of people that would be true. So just to really round off the conversation, then I guess now we're looking to 2021 and beyond. I agree with you. Consumer behavior has changed sufficiently to warrant a review of our roadmaps. The employee experience, particularly when it comes to contact centers, working from home in some capacity is probably going to stick around for the foreseeable. Now we've started to do it. I think from a business, from an operational, from a customer perspective, we've broken through those mindset barriers of whether or not some of this stuff is possible for us individually or as a business. We've got comfortable with using technology or allowing our employees to work from home. What should we be thinking about, or what should the listeners and watchers of this show be thinking about as we head into 2021, especially when it comes from a contact center perspective?
My honest view is, I think it's still about the basics. I'm a massive, and you, Claire, you know this, we used to work together. I'm a massive believer in, that getting the basics right is probably 85-90% of what we do. So, but I think what we will, I think as humans coming out of the COVID experience and, to varying degrees experiencing worry, really probably for the first time in some instances, recognize the real importance of the relationships that we have that perhaps we previously always took for granted and didn't realize. Really understanding how important interaction is to us. We're seeing it in our call duration times at the moment. Customers because actually they're not talking to anybody else, right? And more so maybe on the Waitrose side of the business than perhaps on the JL, but not exclusively. So I think that the criticality of interaction and engagement, we always knew it was massively important. And I think we always recognize, for me anyway, you look at the people that deliver great service, invariably it's because they're brilliant at those interactions. So I think it's a renewed energy and effort on that interaction. And for me, and I look at what I would love to be able to do in my organization is really look to accelerate that kind of emotive customer experience delivery and that connection. And it's not about having a 10-hour chat and a horribly scripted conversation, but it's being able to pick out those moments with certain customers, who do want to have a chat with you, and do you want to have more of an, they want to have more of an experience talking to you. Some customers will only ever want transactional, and that's great. And if you try not to give them transactional, you're in a lot of trouble as well. But I think, what we should all learn out of this is the importance that plays, and probably just being more conscious of that, and therefore in our plans, what we do. And technology, there was something about it on LinkedIn, I'm sure we've all seen it, which was who's driven the biggest acceleration in your digital strategy? Is it your CTO? Is it your chairman? Or is it COVID? Well, what a shocker, it's COVID. but actually, equally, we've all learned how important technology is to us.
Yes.
And therefore, this isn't an either or. I would really hope, and certainly in my thinking, technology historically has always felt a little bit reductive. The approach has always been reductive. It's about taking cost out. It's about removing. No. It's not that. Of course it can be, but it's also about how it can create capacity for you to add some real value in that human experience. The people that will win at this is the people that get that bit right. And how can you take a chat bot, automate, self-serve a whole chunk of stuff, but have the ability to know when it's really critical, you deliver them to a brilliant person who can have a fantastic conversation, and make that customer a customer for life.
And enabled with things like knowledge management centers at their fingertips, so they've got the answers rather than having to make people wait. I totally agree with you. I guess if my reflection on this conversation and my experience, I guess talking to people in the technology sector and on the business side over the last few months, is that we've got an opportunity to review our customer experience now and our employee experience, and we've learned a hell of a lot about how much more important employee empowerment and engagement is than ever before with people working from home. Let's continue to think that way about enabling agents and employees to deliver awesome experiences through technology, and get away from this mantra of, if we stick a chatbot in there, we could save X thousand in labor. Because when we make those decisions, invariably it leads to a worse experience, and you have more irate customers because the empathy just is not there yet to detect it. So how can we work with technology and from a human perspective think about the problems we need to solve, and therefore the solutions that we need, rather than the other way around. Anyway, Ray, it's been absolutely amazing to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I'd just like to thank everybody who's watching as well. And if you did enjoy this conversation today, please do drop us a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you again, Ray, and see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.